All right. Good morning. How is everyone doing? Well, we had spring for a very short little bit, and now we have wind and a lot of wind. Well, let's start this morning off with some prayer requests, and then we have 4 chapters that we're going to cover today. So we're going to be moving rather quickly through our text. What prayer request do we have? Are you women all awake after being here most of the day yesterday? No? What were some of the highlights of the conference? I was trying to figure out a way all week to try and increase attendance by opening it up to the men, but neither Amanda nor Jackie would be persuaded. I know. I thought my arguments were going really well until Friday when Jackie finally said, well, if the men come, who's going to be our speaker? I realized, wait, well, we open up the men, then all of a sudden we have to have a new speaker. Uh, so, yes, the Columbia contingent. That's what we're called now. We're the Columbia contingent. I love it. Yeah. No, we have a, right. We should come up with a symbol for our, yes, we have 5 of us going. Well, 6 of us total. Um, Myself, the Dickies, Bradley Freeman, and one of the Pollock kids. I can't remember anymore. Yeah, I know. Uh, Rachel Pollock is joining us, which I'm thrilled about because now on the way home, Bradley and I have someone who speaks Spanish. Um, so I don't have to worry about that part of it. And then Jim Cornell from Meridian First Baptist Church is joining us. So just be praying that that comes along, that the tickets are purchased, so we have our travel dates set. We're all going down together, but we're not coming back together. Um, I don't know. Todd and Jeanette seem to have a reason to stay down a week longer than everyone else. I don't know why. But yeah, and then just prayer for Peter as he puts together the projects and the team. Uh, what we'll be doing is primarily helping out with the youth camp and a possible VBS. And now that Bradley's going down, there's a possibility we'll be doing some sheetrocking in their location. They need to subdivide a room, and since we'll have Bradley available to do that, because that is what Bradley does for a living, we might get that project done, assuming Peter can get the permissions needed to do the work in the building. So yeah, be praying for the projects, be praying for the finances, that everything pulls together there, and then just that we're all spiritually ready and prepared for the trip. So, what's that? Am I getting my steps in? Oh, well, apparently I have something to work on over the next 2 months. I'm going to have to put my treadmill on incline of 3 and just, okay. You could have told me this before the tickets were bought. Right? I'm committed. I won't let Todd outdo me. I'll make it. It's a challenge, right? Yeah. So, all right, the Columbia trip. Praises for yesterday. What else? I know she's not going to say anything, but Nancy's husband is leaving this week with all their stuff. So Jim and Nancy Waugh, this will be, well, they'll be back and forth as far as Sundays is concerned, but come this Friday and Saturday, Jim is loading up everything and getting out of town. So we need to be praying for them, and their sons are coming in to help them, and so they'll be driving across country. Nancy's going to stay back home and hold down the fort. And Be praying for Jim and his sons as they travel back east with all their stuff. Speaking of Jim, hi Jim, bye Jim. All right, any other prayer requests? All right, well, I will go ahead and get us started in prayer here. Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for, again, the opportunity we have to come and just look into your word and dive into 1 Samuel. Cover a lot of ground this morning. Just thankful for the study and just helping us to see how you moved through the early history of Israel and bringing about the kings that they demanded, Lord, but how you were completely sovereign over everything. And pray that through the study this morning, we will be honoring and glorifying to you. We lift up the Columbia team as we are preparing for that trip. Just pray that all the various needs will come together, the plans will come together, and that we'll have a good time down there, Lord, just ministering in any way in which we can help the Hudsons and Marissa and the team there in Medellin. We want to continue to lift up Jim and Nancy as they are preparing to move across the country, and just thank you for allowing things to come together as they have, and pray specifically for Jim and his sons as they will be loading up and making the trek back east with all their furniture and just packing up their home and going, Lord. And do pray for watch over Nancy as she is here for a week or so on her own, that you'll just protect her as well. And Lord, we give you praises for the missions or for the women's conference yesterday, and thank you for Carolyn's willingness to come and minister to our women here, and look forward to what is to come this summer with all the various events. And pray for the Kensingers as they head down to California this week for Jackie's graduation, Lord, and just thankful that she's been able to complete everything, and just one final little presentation she has to do, and then gets to celebrate the graduation on Friday. We thank you, Lord, for, again, your love. We thank you for the grace that you show us each and every day, and the opportunity we have to serve you and glorify you. And it's in your Son's name I pray. Amen. All right, so we are in 1 Samuel chapter 19. And if you are wondering, there is no note page, because as I started looking through it and putting it together, I realized we got 4 chapters, and I didn't want to give you another book. So your note pages is your Bible. And we're going to cover chapters 19, 20, 21, and 22. This originally was not the scheduled plan, but if you recall back to everything Ben had to cover between chapters 17 and 18, as he was prepping for his studies, he realized chapter 17 alone was going to take him an hour. And he's like, I don't know if I can get 19 in. And so I looked at 19 through 22 and I said, well, we have a lot of narrative that parallel each other, and so we're going to squeeze them in. And so just follow along. And so really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through the text and point out some things that we need to consider as we are looking through these passages, and some of the significance that we don't necessarily see directly in these texts, but just as we were to study the rest of Scripture and just understanding the significance of what's going on here, there are things that we do need to be aware of. So 1 Samuel chapter 19, just starting verse 1. Then Saul spoke with Jonathan his son and all his servants to put David to death. But Jonathan, Saul's son, greatly delighted in David, so Jonathan told David, saying, Saul my father is seeking to put you to death. So now, please be careful in the morning and stay in a secret place and hide yourself, and I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak with my father about you. What I perceive, I will tell you. So just starting off here, we seem to have kind of a little apparent of a contradiction between verses 1 and 3. So then Saul spoke with Jonathan his son and all his servants to put David to death. In that first verse, it appears that Jonathan is aware that Saul wants to put him to death. In verse 3, there's kind of this questioning, well, I'll perceive what my father wants to do, almost as if he is second guessing it. it is reason to believe that Jonathan is not quite sure, or maybe he's looking for a reason to hope that Saul isn't serious about wanting to put David to death, but he understands the gravity of the situation, and this wouldn't just be an attack on David. This would be an attack on the Torah. It would be an attack on Israel's law. And so there's much greater things here than Saul wanting to get rid of a future king. And it's important that we understand that Jonathan understands all of this. This is not just a matter of my dad wants to kill my friend. This is a matter of this is a grievous sin that is being pursued here. And Jonathan wants to be certain of his father's intentions. Now, just by way of refresher, and I'll toss this out there, why did Saul want David dead? Yep. Saul was afraid that David was going to take over the kingdom. And even in all the battles and everything leading up to this point, David had been heralded. He had been praised. He had been successful in battle. And Saul is reading the writing on the wall. He is seeing all of this. And so he's starting to get very afraid about his power and his position. And so he begins talking that he wants to see David dead. Now, why would he talk about it? You would think as king, he could have kept quiet and silently just made it happen. What was probably Saul's motivation in talking about it? What do you think's going on there? Okay, trying to make David look more negative instead of the positive hero he was. There's probably a lot of frustration happening with Saul, the anger coming out, probably pride as king. The threats against David is probably also trying to keep the rest of the subjects in line. So there is a lot happening here in Saul's mind. And this is important because we begin to see a decline in Saul's mentality, his mental state, as he is progressing further in wanting to kill David. So Jonathan hatches his plan and says, I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak with my father about you, and what I perceive I will tell you. So Jonathan is very clear to David that he is on David's side. He recognizes the sin and he wants to protect David. Then Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul, his father, and said to him, do not let the king sin against his servant David, since he has not sinned against you, and since his works have been very good for you. For he took his life in his hand and struck the Philistine, and Yahweh brought about a great salvation for all Israel. You saw it and were glad. Why then will you sin against innocent blood by putting David to death without a cause? See, Jonathan is recounting all that had happened before his father. His father would have been very well aware of this, so this isn't new information to Saul, but Jonathan is recounting it, and this is where we see Jonathan understood the significance. He understood the history, and he is trying to make Saul that much more aware of it. He's trying to hold Saul to the law. He's trying to hold Saul from committing a grievous act. And Saul listened to the voice of Jonathan and swore, as Yahweh lives, he shall not be put to death. So Saul gives Jonathan what Jonathan wants to hear. David will not be put to death. It is reasonable to think that maybe Saul was serious in this, but we're going to see that if he was serious in his commitment to not put David to death, that he very quickly abandoned that. He did not hold true to his word. Then Jonathan called David, and Jonathan told him all these words, and Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence. Then there was war again. So Jonathan hears the words of his father, calls upon David, says, hey, things should be good for now, brings him back. He's back into the presence of Saul. War was again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines and struck them with a great slaughter, so that they fled before them. Now, Saul brings David back. They're in good graces, but David immediately goes out to war, to battle against the Philistines. What do you think Saul was hoping would happen there? That the Philistines would kill him. Okay, so this is murder by Philistines. In any case, if Saul really wanted David safe and didn't want him dead, he probably would have said, hey, David, why don't you stay back? But the fact that David goes out into battle is a good indicator that Saul was still not wanting to necessarily spare David's life. Now there was an evil spirit from Yahweh on Saul as he was sitting in his house with his spear in his hand, and David was playing the harp with his hand. So now we've come back from battle, and part of what's important that we just need to understand as we're reading Old Testament narrative is the passage of time even in between verses. Because we've gone from battle, now we're in a banquet room, and David is playing the harp before Saul. And Saul tried to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, so that he stuck the spear into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. Now I'm curious, how many of you, just from your childhood Sunday school days, have this image of Saul throwing the spear at David and he misses because he's got really bad aim? Anyone but me? Okay. So I was reading through this, I was just kind of questioning there. I'm like, it just says Saul tried to pin David to the wall with the spear. So my imagery of him throwing the spear kind of had to get set aside. Because I'm like, no, Paul could have probably have been really up close to David and had really bad aim. But David slipped away into out of Saul's presence so that the spear stuck into the wall. Okay. David fled and escaped by night. Then Saul sent messengers to David's house to keep watch over him in order to put him to death in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, if you do not make an escape for your life tonight, tomorrow you will be put to death. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went out and fled and escaped. So something that's important here is we see Michal's faithfulness to David as his wife, as his covenant wife. She genuinely, I think, loved him, wanted to spare his life, and so she warns him that you can't stay here. It's not safe to stay here tonight because by tomorrow morning you will be dead. Now, why Saul didn't send his army, his messengers in directly into the house to kill him that night, we don't necessarily know, but the plan was we're going to kill David in the morning, and Michal was made aware of this and warned David, let him out of the house. Then Michal took the house idol and laid it on the bed and put a quilt of goat's hair at its head and covered it with clothes. Now there is a connection here with Michal and someone else. Who else? Who else used an idol? Okay. You have the idol being used to spare the household. Just an interesting connection that is there. Done a little differently, okay, but she uses this idol to really deceive the messengers as they come in. Saul sent messengers to take David, but she said he is sick. So Saul sent messengers to see David, saying, bring him up to me on his bed, that I may put him to death. The messengers came, and behold, the household idol was on the bed, and the quilt of goat's hair at its head. So Saul said to Michal, why have you deceived me like this, and let my enemy go, so that he has escaped? And Michal said to Saul, he said to me, let me go. Why should I be put to death? Now, what did Michal just do right there? She lied. Okay. Does this justify lying? No. Okay. But God's providence, this is how David was spared. Michal was untruthful. She lied because David was not the one who said, "Let me go. Why should I be put to death?" She was the one who had spoken those words to David to get him out. So it is a very clear lie. It doesn't justify what it doesn't justify her actions, but it was the plan that God had in order to spare David. Yeah, I would infer that. For some reason there is an idol there. Um, yeah, why that idol? We don't necessarily even know what idol it was. But then McCall took the household idol, and that's an interesting adjective there. It's the household idol. So what was it that was being held in the house? Um, this, I think, is when we talk about the idols being present, is just further indicator of some of what would eventually lead to David's sin. Is having a false worship of God or a false understanding of parts of God, having to go through that. Think about our own selves. Do we have household idols? What might our household idols be? Yes, Dean. I'm sure there probably is. I just don't have that um, off the top of my head. We'd have to probably go back further into looking at the marriage. What's that? Saul's daughter? Okay. Um, yeah. Okay. So yeah, you'll have to research that. I just didn't look at that this morning. Um, but the household idols in our own house, getting back there. What type of household idols might we have? TV in every room. Money. Okay. What else? There are things in our own homes that we worship that we are unaware of that we worship them. And worship is simply a matter of giving attention, giving time, giving focus to. And so it is something that we need to be aware of as we are just living our own lives. Yes, Russ, I see you had a hand back there. Yeah, yeah. Um, that that is true when you think about it. What's the in your living room? What is the central focal piece? I can tell you in our house, it's the TV. All the furniture is set up to face the TV. And if you've never been in my living room, we have roughly 10 caged animals. You would think if they were more important, we would set our couches up so that we could observe our caged animals. But no, it's not. They're off to the side. They watch TV with us. Um, and if you don't believe me, come over sometime. Um, Sit on my couch with me. We'll watch a TV show, and I'll point to you the animals that are watching TV. Um, so, um, no, I don't do that because they are moody about the shows I watch. I've got two rabbits that watch TV, and one in particular does not like rom-coms. Um, so, yeah. All right. Can't blame them. And some of you are like, BJ, why are you watching rom-coms? Just let that go, people. Um, all right. And it was told to Saul, saying, "Behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah." Okay. Now, Ramah is the city. Not entirely sure what Naioth is. There's not a lot of information in it. Probably just a space of dwelling within Naioth. Could be just a suburb, name of a smaller section within the city. Um, then Saul sent messengers to take David, but they saw the company of the prophets prophesying with Samuel, standing and presiding over them. And the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. This was told to Saul, and he sent other messengers, and they also prophesied. So Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they also prophesied. Then he himself went to Ramah and came as far as the large well that is in Secu, and he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And someone said, Behold, they are at Naioth in Ramah. So he went there to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God came upon him also, so that he went along prophesying continuously until he came to Naioth in Ramah. He also stripped off his clothes, and he too prophesied before Samuel, and lay down naked all the day and all that night. Therefore they say, Is Saul also among the prophets? So we have this beginning of this pursuit where Saul is going after David, and ultimately they'll end up in Ramah. Now, what's significant about Saul ending up in Ramah here? Well, that's where it started when he met Samuel, is in Ramah. But he sends his messengers, and they keep prophesying. They keep prophesying. And what we see here is God taking complete control over Saul's men and putting them under his direct influence to where they are prophesying, and he does the same to Saul. And that is pretty significant, because eventually here soon we're going to see the spirit from God being taken away, this ability over Saul being taken away from Saul, and Saul's continued decline. This is in contrast to what we saw earlier in verse 9 of the evil spirit that Yahweh had placed upon Saul. So this shows us that this entire time God is orchestrating everything that is happening in Saul's life as Saul is pursuing David. And ultimately this is going to be used for God's glory, but I think it also goes to just further show to Israel that despite the fact that they have a king, and they're about to have another king in David, who is their king and who still is control and should be their king? God. Okay, so that's something to look at as we are looking at all these earthly kings. That was not supposed to be the case. That was Israel bringing this upon themselves, upon their own demands, God providentially using it to show them his authority. And then verse 24, we see the significance of a king at his most vulnerable moment, showing all of his weakness, essentially setting aside all his royalty, all his power, by stripping off his clothes. He too prophesied before Samuel. He lay down naked all the day and all the night. So complete vulnerability. This is not something that would be expected of a king. It was probably frowned upon, looked down upon his subject matters, those who had heard about it. And so it really does put Saul in this vulnerable place as a king, further showing his weakness in who he was. Again, God orchestrating all of this. We get to verse 20, chapter 20. Then David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, What have I done? What is my iniquity and what is my sin before your father that he is seeking my life? And he said to him, Far from it, you shall not die. Behold, my father does nothing either great or small without revealing it in my ear. So why would my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. David leaves Ramah. What's interesting about this is we do not see David in the previous 5 or 6 verses of chapter 19. The interaction there is Saul before Samuel, and Saul beginning to prophesy, and then we jump back to the narrative with David and Jonathan. David flees, goes back to Jonathan and confronts Jonathan about why is this happening? Why is your father out to kill me? And Jonathan is like, if my father was out to kill you, I would know this. So apparently he didn't. Or Saul had tricked him and had deceived Jonathan, or just didn't tell Jonathan. I believe that Saul in this particular situation didn't necessarily tell Jonathan, because he realized if he had told Jonathan, word would get out to David, and Saul would have a less chance of being able to actually capture and kill David. But so when David confronts Jonathan, Jonathan is saying, don't know what all, I don't know anything about this. I don't know that it's true. David swears again, saying, your father knows well that I have found favor in your sight, and he has said, do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved, but truly as Yahweh lives and as your soul lives, there is hardly a step between me and death. So David is pleading with him, saying, the reason you don't know is because your father doesn't want you to know. And that's probably the case, is Saul did not want Jonathan to know, and so Jonathan didn't know. David is pleading on this, and Jonathan really is at this crossroads of, do I believe my father or do I believe David? And what does Jonathan do? He believes David. Jonathan said to David, whatever your soul says, I will do for you. So the friendship here is so strong that Jonathan is going to stick with his friend. But I think it's more than just the friendship with David. I think it's Jonathan's obedience to what he knew was right uh, versus wrong, according to the law. He understood that Saul, his father, the king, was acting sinfully. And so that further bolstered his friendship and his commitment to David. He recognized David's righteousness and was going to uh, uh, stay beside that. There's an important principle that I think we can pull out here, is that of our relationships with people in general. Sometimes we have a sense of obligation or loyalty to people simply because they're family. And what we need to be on guard against, though, is if they are asking us to do something that is sinful or unrighteous, that there is a point in which those family relationships need to be put at arm's length, put on hold, or whatever, so that we can continue to walk in righteousness and obedience. Even if that means that we have to side with friends over family. Even if that means we have to side with our spiritual family over our earthly family. In fact, our spiritual family, I would say, is even more of a priority. We just need to be careful about a sense of loyalty to family when that loyalty is actually leading us to act unrighteously or act sinfully. Now, where might this practically happen? You might have a younger generation. Uh, Kids are out with all their cousins, and they're just out having a good old time. But cousins are unbelievers. They want to go out and party and do a bunch of things that are unethical. Um, and the kids are saying, well, you know, do I do that because they're family? I don't want to be the odd man out. I don't want to upset my family. No, if your family's asking you to go out and do something that is sinful, you don't do it. You need to stay true to God's word. And if you've got your unrighteous family wanting you to go out and do that, but you've got church friends who are asking you to go and do something that is more biblical, have no shame in telling them, I'm going to go with my church friends and do this. I'm going to go to this activity or youth event, whatever, because this is what is right. And so we shouldn't be afraid to step up to family that wants us to act unrighteously. So David and Jonathan continue in this plan, and wow, I can see what Ben was meaning. I got 25 minutes to fly through 3 chapters there. So David said to Jonathan, they begin to hatch this plan. Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I ought to sit down to eat with the king, but let me go that I may hide myself in the field until the third evening. If your father misses me at all, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, because it is the yearly sacrifice there for the whole family. If he says it is good, your servant will have peace, but if he is very angry, know that he has decided on evil. Therefore show loving kindness to your servant, for you have brought your servant into a covenant of Yahweh with you. But if there is iniquity in me, put me to death yourself, for why then should you bring me to your father? So David hatches this plan. He tells Jonathan, well, there's going to be this feast. If your dad is upset that I'm not there, then we know what your dad is thinking. Just tell him I'm going to the sacrifice with the family. Uh, Chances are there is a yearly ritual for the family that David was using as his excuse to get out of there. Uh, David says if he's going to be put to death, he'd rather be put to death at the hands of Jonathan rather than go face Saul, which just shows you the gravity that David understood he was in. Um, and so they hatch this plan. Now, Jonathan says, picking up in verse 9, "Far be it from you, for if I should indeed come to know that evil has been decided by my father to come upon you, then would I not tell you about it?" Then David said to Jonathan, "Who will tell me if your father answers you harshly?" Jonathan said to David, "Come and let us go out into the field." So both of them went out into the field. Jonathan said to David, "Yahweh, the God of Israel, be witness when I have examined my father about this time tomorrow or the third day. Behold, if there is good feeling toward David, shall I not then send to you and reveal it in your ear? If it please my father to do you harm, may Yahweh do so in Jonathan more also, if I do not reveal it in your ear and send you away, that you may go in peace, and may Yahweh be with you as he has been with my father. And if I am still alive, will you not show me the loving kindness of Yahweh, that I may die? You shall not cut off your loving kindness from my house forever, not even when Yahweh cuts off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth." So Jonathan cut a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May Yahweh require it at the hands of David's enemy." And so they make this promise of how they are going to uh, hold together. Jonathan's going to protect David, ensure safety. Uh, and This is significant because Jonathan's covenant with David holds a lot of weight. He's gone behind his father's back and covenanted to keep David safe. Jonathan made David swear again because of his love for him, because he loved him as he loved his own soul. Then Jonathan said to him, "Tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be missed because your seat will be missing. When you have stayed for 3 days, you shall go down quickly and come to the place where you hid yourself on that eventful day, and you shall remain by the stone Ezel. And I will shoot 3 arrows to the side as though I sent them towards a target. And behold, I will send the young man, saying, Go find the arrows. If I specifically say to the young man, Behold, the arrows are on the side of you, get them. Then come, for there is peace for you and no harm, as Yahweh lives. But if I say to the youth, Behold, the arrows are beyond you, go, for Yahweh has sent you away. As for the agreement of which you and I have spoken, behold, Yahweh is between you and me forever." So David hid in the field, and when the new moon came, the king sat down to eat food. So we all understand the plan. David, you're going to go out in the field. If I shoot one direction, we're good. If I shoot the other direction, you're not good. Simple plan. David hid in the field. When the new moon came, the king sat down to eat food. The king sat on his seat as usual, the seat of David, the seat by the wall. Then Jonathan rose up, and Abner sat down by Saul's side, but David's place was missing. Nevertheless, Saul did not speak anything that day, for he said, "It is an accident. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean." So David is missing. Saul says, "Oh, this is an accident. We'll give him one day." Saul is thinking. The very fact that he points this out shows you that Saul was on the lookout for David. This was not a change of heart after the second day. Saul is recognizing, he's pointing out the fact that David just must be sick. He's unclean, almost like he's trying to play it off. But Saul knows what he is thinking. Now it happened the next day, the second day of the new moon, that David's place was missing. So Saul said to Jonathan his son, "Why has the son of Jesse not come to the meal, either yesterday or today?" So now he's calling back on the fact that David wasn't even here yesterday. Jonathan then answered Saul, "David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem, and he said, Please send me on my way, since our family has a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to attend. So now, if I have found favor in your sight, please let me get away that I may see my brothers. For this reason he has not come to the king's table." And so this arouses Saul's anger. because Saul recognizes what is going on here. David has escaped. David has escaped with the help of Jonathan. Saul's anger burned against Jonathan, and he said to him, "You son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you are choosing the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness?" Now, something that just got to point out there, Saul is actually not speaking directly evil about Jonathan's mother. This is name calling. He's talking about Jonathan's wickedness. He is calling Jonathan evil and wicked here. For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. So now send and bring him to me, for he must surely die. But Jonathan answered Saul his father and said, "Why should he be put to death? What has he done?" Then Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him down. So Jonathan knew that his father had decided to put David to death. See, there's the difference. He hurls the spear at Jonathan. Now, when you are wanting to attack someone, if you're up close, like he was with David, he was probably pretty angry. He goes after David with the spear. The fact that he throws the spear at Jonathan probably gives us an indicator of the level of anger has arisen now. We're going from anger to wrath because he picks it up and he throws it. He doesn't just try and stab him with it, he throws it. So we have anger that is intensifying. Jonathan arose from the table in burning anger and did not eat food on the second day of the new moon, for he was grieved over David because his father had dishonored him. Now it happened in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field for the appointment with David, and a very young man was with him. And he said to his young man, "Run, find now the arrows which I am about to shoot." As the young man was running, he shot an arrow past him. When the young man reached the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan called after the lad and said, "Is not the arrow beyond you? And Jonathan called after the young man, "Hurry, be quick, do not stay." And Jonathan's young man gathered up the arrows, came to his master. But the young man did not know of anything. Only Jonathan and David knew about the matter. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to his young man and said to him, "Go, bring them to the city." When the young man was gone, David rose from the south side and fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept together. But David wept more. So Jonathan gets attacked. He gets angry. He is grieved. Again, this is not just anger because his friend is at risk. This is a violation of God's law of what is happening here. And this is upsetting Jonathan. He gets up and leaves. They go and carry out this plan. So David is warned. Jonathan gets his messenger to leave, and David comes before Jonathan and bows down 3 times. That shows us something. What was David recognizing in that moment before Jonathan? The bowing of 3 times. He's actually still recognizing Jonathan as prince. That's part of the bowing that is occurring there. He's, even after everything that is going on, and this, even with their close friendship, David bows before the current prince. And that is significant. That shows us not only was there this brotherly love, this friendship, but there was still a respect that David had for the king and the king's descendant, the prince. Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, inasmuch as we have sworn to each other in the name of Yahweh, saying, Yahweh will be between me and you, and between my seed and your seed forever." Then he rose and departed, while Jonathan went into the city. And so Jonathan goes back home. David leaves, continues to flee. Chapter 21 says David is out. We see David came to Nob to Abimelech the priest, and Ahimelech came trembling to meet David and said to him, "Why are you alone and no one is with you?" David said to Ahimelech the priest, "The king has commanded me with a matter and has said to me, let no one know anything about the matter on which I am sending you and with which I have commanded you, and I have directed the young men to a certain place. So now what do you have on hand? Give 5 loaves of bread into my hand, or whatever can be found." So David essentially tells a lie here to protect himself. He's telling Ahimelech that the king sent me, but we're not supposed to say anything about it. We're supposed to keep this hush hush. David doesn't let on to the fact that he is being um, pursued by the king. So David lies to Ahimelech, and keep that in just on the back burner because there's significance to that lie and what ends up happening because of it. So now what do you have on hand? You give 5 loaves of bread into my hand, or whatever can be found. And the priest answered David and said, there is no ordinary bread on hand, but there is consecrated bread, if only the young men have kept themselves from women. And David answered the priest and said to him, surely women have been kept from us, as previously when I set out and the vessels of the young man were holy, though it was an ordinary journey. How much more then today will their vessels be holy? So the priest gave him consecrated bread, for there was no bread there, but the bread of the presence, which was removed from before Yahweh, in order to put hot bread in its place when it was taken. So the timing here actually tells us what day of the week it is. When would the consecrated bread have been removed with hot bread? Would have been on the Sabbath. Okay, so the consecrated bread that is removed for the hot bread is removed as just part of the ceremonial process, but this is what is given to David. Now, one of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before Yahweh, and his name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's shepherds. And David said to Ahimelech, now is there not a spear or a sword on hand? For I brought neither my sword nor my weapons in my hand, because the king's matter was urgent. Then the priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you struck down in the valley of Elah, behold, it is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you would take it for yourself, take it, for there is no other except it here. David said, there is none like it, give it to me. So again, David is just telling more lies. I had to get out so quickly I couldn't even gather my weapons. That seems a little absurd. You would think Ahimelech might question that. Why are you guys running on this journey without your weapons? But in any case, Ahimelech said, hey, there's the sword of Goliath. It was probably kept there as a memento, as a memorial to God's faithfully protecting the people. And as a reminder, so they kept it, and it was there wrapped in the cloth, and David takes it. David arose and fled that day from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing of this one as they danced, saying, Saul has struck his thousands and David his 10,000s? And David took these words to heart and greatly feared Achish, king of Gath. So he disguised his sanity in their sight and acted insanely in their hands, and scribbled on the doors of the gate and let his saliva run down into his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, behold, you see the man behaving as a madman. Why do you bring him to me? Do I lack madmen, that you have brought me this one to act the madman before me? Shall this one come into my house? So as David is fleeing, the people of Gath, they recognize this guy. Like, we know who this is. And so David puts on more deception, more lies, all trying to protect himself. This is not going good for David. It's just the things he is doing are very unrighteous before the Lord, but he is trying to protect himself. The king basically says, hey, I've got enough crazy people around here. I don't need another one. Why are you bringing this madman before me? Do I not have enough of my own? So what that does, and the reason probably they were wanting to take this other madman before the king was to put him in captivity. And David knows that's not a good thing, because then he's caught. He could eventually be pursued and captured by Saul. So David is doing all he can to keep running, and it works in this case. He's crazy. He's able to run away. David departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam, and his brothers and all his father's household heard of it and went down there to him. Then everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was bitter of soul gathered to him, and he became a commander over them. Now there were about 400 men with him. And David went from there to Mizpah of Moab, and he said to the king of Moab, please let my father and my mother come and stay with you until I know what God will do for me. Then he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him all the time that David was in the fortress. And the prophet of Gad said to David, do not stay in the fortress, go and enter into the land of Judah. So David went and entered into the forest of Hera. So David is amassing this group of people. He's becoming commander over them. This is not really a good way to try and hide. If you're trying to hide from the king, last thing you want is a group of followers. But David makes a family decision here and protects his parents, and asks protection from the king of Moab for his parents, so that he is able to continue on into Judah. Then Saul heard that David and the men who were with him had been discovered. Now Saul was sitting in Gibeah under the tamarisk tree on the height with his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing around him. And Saul said to his servants who were standing around him, hear now, O Benjamites, will the son of Jesse also give to all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? For all of you have conspired against me, so that there is no one who reveals in my ear when my son cuts a covenant with the son of Jesse, and there is none of you who is sorry for me or reveals in my ear that my son has caused my servant to rise up against me to lie in ambush, as it is this day. So Saul is questioning his men. Somehow word got to him about this covenant, about this promise, and he's questioning his men, saying, is David going to give you everything I have given you? This is a power play. I've given you all of this. Is David going to do this? Why is no one telling me that my son Jonathan made this covenant, my son made this promise with David, and that David lies in ambush waiting to kill me? Now that's actually a foreshadow of what is to come, but it's an inaccurate one, because we do see a time in which David lies in wait for Saul, but doesn't ambush him. And so Saul is really twisting all of everything he can to say, hey, look at me. Why are you guys not protecting me? But the one guy that happened to be there when David was running, the chief shepherd, Doeg the Edomite, who was standing by the servants of Saul, said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub. Got to get a cup up here. And he asked of Yahweh for him, gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath, the Philistine. Then the king sent someone to summon Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's household, the priests who were in Nob, and all of them came to the king. And Saul said, listen now, son of Ahitub. And he answered, here I am, my lord. Saul then said to him, why have you and the son of Jesse conspired against me, in that you have given him bread and a sword, and have asked of God on his behalf, so that he would rise up against me by lying in ambush, as it is this day? So Saul is accusing Ahitub here of all that is happening, talking about giving him provision in the bread, but giving him a sword. Saul is saying now David is actually armed to be able to ambush me. Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, and who among all your servants is as faithful as David, even the king's son-in-law, who is captain over your guard and is honored in all your house? Did I just begin to ask of God on behalf today? Far be it from me. Do not let the king impute anything to his servant or to any of the household of my father, for your servant knows nothing small or great of this whole affair. And so Ahimelech is saying, we did not know what is happening or what was happening. We weren't entirely aware of it. Again, pointing out, was there any fault in what David was doing, any fault in what we were doing. But the king said, "You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's household." And the king said to the guards who were standing by him, "Turn around and put the priests of Yahweh to death, because of their hand because of their hand also is with David, and because they knew that he was fleeing and did not reveal it in my ears." But the servants of the king were not willing to put forth their hands to fall upon the priests of Yahweh. Then the king said to Doeg, "You turn around and attack the priests." And Doeg the Edomite turned around and attacked the priests, and he put to death that day 85 men who wore the linen ephod. So he struck Nob, the city of the priests, and with the edge of the sword, both men and women, infants and nursing babies, also oxen, donkeys, and sheep. He struck with the edge of the sword. So what do we have here? We have the result of David's lie. David's lie led to the death of all of those here in Nob. That's significant. God was not going to allow David's sins to completely go unpunished. There were ramifications of it. This actually carries out the prophecy against Eli and Eli's household. The wiping out of that household. So he struck Nob, the city, and the priests with the edge of the sword, both men and women, infants and nursing babes, also oxen, donkeys, and sheep. He struck them with the edge of the sword. But one son of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. And Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the priests of Yahweh. Then David said to Abiathar, "I know on that day when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, 'It is I who have turned against every person in your father's household.' Stay with me, do not be afraid, for he who seeks my life seeks your life, for you are safe with me." David knew when he saw Doeg what was going to happen. And that's why David takes full responsibility here. He takes the responsibility for the killings, because it is I who has turned against every person in your father's household. David recognizes the gravity of what he has done. And then with that, we end the chapter with really what David should do in trying to make any kinds of amends in the situation, and that is protecting the one sole survivor in Abiathar. So we see in all of these just a lot happening, but the one big application is just if you look at the number of times within just these 4 chapters where sin was directly punished by God, even though that sin was used to try and spare a person's life, doesn't justify the sin. God was providentially working in and through all of this, but God, being a just judge, was still punishing sin along the way. So again, very fast flyover. We'll slow down a little bit as we get into the next few chapters next week. And so with that, I will close us in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time. Just thank you again for what we get to read in 1 Samuel, and pray for your blessings upon the remainder of the church service today. It's in your Son's name I pray. Amen.